My wife's family called me a disgrace at my wife's sister's promotion party. 10 minutes later, her CEO walked in, shook my hand, and said, "Well, if IT isn't the owner of the heritage." Right after that, well, isn't this just peachy? Here I am, standing in the middle of the heritage, my restaurant, my blood, sweat, and tears poured into every damn floorboard. And I feel like I need permission to breathe. Tonight, apparently, it's not mine. Nope, tonight it belongs to Brielle Ashford, my wife's golden child sister who just scored some hotshot promotion at her Manhattan law firm. And lucky me gets to watch from the sidelines while she holds court in my dining room like she's Queen Elizabeth gracing the peasants with her presence. I should have known this was a mistake the second Lila pitched the idea 2 weeks ago. "Marcus, honey, it would mean so much to the family if we could use the heritage for Brielle's celebration," she'd said, using that sweet voice she reserves for when she wants something. "It could be a chance to mend things, you know? Mend things. Right. Like putting a Band-Aid on a severed artery and expecting it to hold." But here's the kicker. I actually said yes. I actually thought, in some delusional corner of my brain, that maybe this would be the olive branch the Ashfords needed to finally see me as something more than the guy who ruined their perfect daughter's life by dragging her down from her ivory tower into the gritty world of restaurant ownership. What a joke. And now? Now I'm wearing a server's uniform. A freaking server's uniform in my own place because Owen, my manager, hit me with the classic "we're short-staffed tonight" line when I walked in. Short-staffed my ass. I've got a sneaking suspicion this was orchestrated, but Owen's been with me since day one, so I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. For now, the uniform feels like a costume designed to humiliate me. Black slacks, white button-down, that little black apron tied around my waist like I'm auditioning for a dinner theater production of How the Mighty Have Fallen. Every time I catch my reflection in the mirror behind the bar, I want to punch something. Instead, I grip my tray tighter and remind myself that this is temporary. Just one night. I can handle one night of this circus. But Jesus Christ, watching Lila work the room is like watching a master class in selective amnesia. She's gliding between tables in that stunning emerald dress I bought her for our anniversary last year, laughing at jokes that probably aren't funny, air-kissing people who've spent the last 3 years treating me like I'm carrying the plague. Her parents, Douglas and Marjorie, are holding court near the bar, and I can practically feel the smugness radiating off them from across the room. Douglas Ashford, a man who's never worked a day in food service but somehow considers himself an expert on the hospitality industry, is gesticulating wildly while telling some story to a group of Brielle's colleagues. Probably about how his son-in-law used to be somebody in finance before he lost his mind and decided to play restaurateur. Marjorie's laugh cuts through the ambient noise like nails on a chalkboard, that practiced society laugh she's perfected after decades of charity galas and country club brunches. I move between the tables, refilling water glasses and clearing plates, and I can hear the whispers following me like a shadow. That's Lila's husband. What a fall from grace. From finance to food service. How embarrassing. Each comment lands like a small cut, not deep enough to bleed out, but enough to remind me exactly where I stand in their estimation. The worst part? Lila pretends she doesn't hear them. She's developed this incredible ability to tune out anything that might force her to actually defend me or our choices. It's like she's got selective hearing that only picks up compliments and dinner orders. I pause near table 12, where Brielle's holding court with some of her law firm buddies, and I can't help but remember when things were different. When Lila used to sit on milk crates in the alley behind this place while I was still gutting it, back when it was just a dream and a lease I probably couldn't afford. She'd bring us coffee in paper cups, and we'd plan out the menu on napkins, talking about how we were going to build something together. Something that was ours. Those conversations feel like they happened in another lifetime, to different people. The Lila sitting on those crates believed in this crazy idea. She believed in me. The Lila laughing with her parents across the room seems like she's forgotten those nights ever existed. My best friend Amir helped me install these hardwood floors, spending weekends sanding and staining until his hands were raw. Shahana painted the accent wall by the kitchen, the one that's now decorated with fake congratulations for my sister-in-law's success. Back then, this place represented freedom. Freedom from the soul-crushing world of corporate finance. Freedom to create something meaningful. freedom to build a legacy that wasn't dependent on market fluctuations and quarterly reports. Now it feels like a prison where I'm serving a life sentence for the crime of following my dreams. The evening drags on, each minute feeling like an hour. I watch Brielle bask in the attention, accepting congratulations like she's just been crowned Miss America. She's always been the family favorite. The one who stayed in their lane, climbed the corporate ladder, never rocked the boat. The responsible one. The successful one. The one who didn't embarrass the family by choosing passion over prestige. I catch Owen's eye from across the room, and he gives me an apologetic shrug. I want to be pissed at him, but I know this isn't his fault. He's just trying to keep the operation running smoothly. It's not his fault that my in-laws turned my restaurant into their personal stage for reminding me of my place in the family hierarchy. As I balance another tray of empty champagne flutes, heading back toward the kitchen, I can feel the weight of every judgmental stare, every whispered comment, every fake smile directed my way. The sting is growing stronger with each passing minute, settling in my chest like a stone I can't swallow. This was supposed to be about mending fences. Instead, it feels like they're building them higher. You know what's funny about rich people? They think their disapproval is supposed to matter to everyone else. The Ashfords have been perfecting their looks of disdain since before I even knew their precious daughter existed. And tonight, they're really bringing their A-game. It's like watching a master class in passive-aggressive warfare, and I'm the unwilling star of their reality show called How to Make Your Son-in-Law Feel Like Absolute Garbage. From the moment I asked for Lila's hand 5 years ago, Douglas and Marjorie made it crystal clear that I wasn't their first choice. Hell, I probably wasn't even in their top 50. I remember sitting in their stuffy Upper East Side apartment, sweating through my best suit, while Douglas looked at me like I was something he'd scraped off his Italian leather loafers. "Finance, you say?" he'd asked, like he was trying to determine if I was even speaking English. "And your family background?" Translation: are you from money, or are we slumming it here? When I told him my dad was a mechanic and my mom taught elementary school, you could practically see his soul leave his body. Marjorie had to excuse herself to powder her nose, but I caught her whispering furiously into her phone in the hallway, probably calling her therapist to schedule an emergency session about her daughter's tragic life choices. But that was nothing compared to their reaction when I announced I was leaving Goldman Sachs to open a restaurant. You'd have thought I told them I was joining the circus or becoming a professional juggler. Douglas actually choked on his scotch, a 30-year-old Macallan that probably cost more than most people's rent. "You're throwing away your career," he'd said. "For what? To flip burgers?" Flip burgers. Right. Because there's no difference between McDonald's and what I've built here. The man couldn't tell a souffle from a sandwich if his life depended on it, but somehow he's an expert on the restaurant industry. Tonight, though? Tonight, they're really letting their freak flags fly. I'm weaving between tables with another tray of appetizers when I catch Douglas leaning inconspiratorially to one of Brielle's colleagues from the firm. "You know," he's saying, loud enough for half the room to hear, "my daughter could have done so much better. Had her pick of Wall Street, really. Brilliant girl, full ride to Columbia." He pauses for dramatic effect, taking a sip of his wine, my wine, from my restaurant's carefully curated selection. But love makes fools of us all, I suppose. The guy he's talking to, some pencil-pushing associate who probably makes more in bonuses than I clear in profit. Not sympathetically like Douglas just shared the tragic tale of a daughter lost to war instead of married to a guy who actually followed his dreams. Marjorie's working her own angle near the windows, surrounded by what I can only describe as her coven of society wives. "It's such a shame," she's saying, her voice carrying that particular tone of fake concern that rich women use when they want to seem compassionate while actually being total bitches. "Marcus was so promising in finance. Lila always said he had such potential. Had. Past tense. Like I died instead of just changing careers." I catch fragments of their conversation as I move past. Glorified waiter now. Such a step down. Embarrassing, really. Each comment is like a paper cut, small, but enough of them, and you start to bleed. The worst part? Lila's standing right there, nursing a glass of champagne and pretending she's suddenly gone deaf. She's developed this incredible talent for selective hearing whenever her parents decide to use me as their personal punching bag. It's like she thinks if she doesn't acknowledge it, it's not really happening. I want to grab her by the shoulders and shake her. I want to remind her about those nights when we stayed up until 3 in the morning, hunched over my laptop, researching suppliers and menu concepts and lease agreements. When she used to say she was proud of me for having the guts to chase something meaningful instead of just chasing a paycheck. Those memories feel like they belong to different people now. People who actually believed in each other. I'm refilling water glasses at table 6 when I hear Brielle's voice cutting through the ambient chatter. Oh, Marcus is very creative, she's telling someone, and I can hear the air quotes around the word creative without even looking. He's always been more of an artistic type, I suppose. Not everyone's cut out for the corporate world. Artistic type. Like I'm some starving painter living in a garret instead of a business owner who's managed to turn a profit in one of the most notoriously difficult industries in the city. But sure, Brielle, reduce everything I've built to a cute little hobby that I'll hopefully grow out of once I realize I need a real job. The thing that really gets me is how they've rewritten history to make themselves look better. In their version of events, I wasn't a successful analyst who made a calculated decision to pursue a passion. No, I was a failure who couldn't hack it in the big leagues and had to settle for something easier. Never mind that opening a restaurant requires more balls, more brains, and more stamina than pushing papers around a conference table ever did. I think about Amir and Shahana, who are probably at home right now, maybe grabbing beers and talking about normal stuff like normal people do. They were here with me during those first brutal months when I wasn't sure if we'd make it past the 6-month mark. Amir spent every weekend helping me install equipment, and Shahana designed our logo for free because she believed in what we were building. They never looked at me like I was damaged goods. They never whispered behind my back or made jokes about my life choices. They just rolled up their sleeves and helped me sand down these floors until they gleamed, until every board told the story of hard work and determination. Those floors that Douglas and Marjorie are now walking on in their designer shoes, probably calculating how much the space would be worth if I just sold it and went back to making them comfortable with a nice, predictable career in finance. The irony is that the heritage is actually successful. We're booked solid most nights. We've got a waiting list for weekend reservations, and food critics have been circling like sharks in a good way. But none of that matters to the Ashfords because success in their world is measured in prestige, not passion. In country club memberships, not customer satisfaction. I watch Douglas gesturing broadly as he regales another group with what I'm sure is another story about his daughter's tragic mistake in marrying beneath her station. His face is getting redder with each glass of wine, and his voice is getting louder and more theatrical. Meanwhile, Marjorie continues her own performance, playing the role of the long-suffering mother-in-law who's been forced to accept her daughter's poor judgment with grace and dignity. It's Academy Award-worthy, really. The way she sighs wistfully when people ask about me, like I'm a terminal illness they're all just learning to live with. And through it all, Lila floats through the room like none of this is happening, like her parents aren't systematically dismantling her husband's dignity in front of a room full of strangers. Like we didn't used to be a team. If you've never experienced true public humiliation, let me paint you a picture. It's not like in the movies where there's dramatic music and slow-motion shots of horrified faces. No, real humiliation is much more mundane and somehow infinitely worse. It's the sudden silence that falls over a room when someone says something so brutal that even the background chatter dies. It's the way conversations stop mid-sentence and all eyes turn toward you like you're the main attraction at a freak show. That's exactly what happens at 9:47 p.m. on what's supposed to be my sister-in-law's celebration night, but has somehow turned into my public execution. I'm balancing a tray of empty champagne flutes, minding my own damn business, when Marjorie Ashford decides it's time to drop the pretense and go nuclear. She's been building up to this moment all evening, getting progressively louder with each glass of Veuve Clicquot, my Veuve Clicquot, from my carefully selected wine inventory. The irony isn't lost on me that she's getting drunk off my dime while preparing to destroy me in front of half of Manhattan's legal community. She's standing near the windows that overlook the street, surrounded by her usual crew of society, wives who hang on her every word like she's delivering the Sermon on the Mount. Marjorie's had just enough alcohol to lower her inhibitions, but not enough to slur her words, which makes her dangerous in the way that only wealthy, entitled women can be when they've decided someone needs to be put in their place. "You know what the real tragedy is?" she announces, her her voice cutting through the ambient noise like a knife through butter. The conversations around her table start to fade as people sense drama brewing. It's not just that Lila married down, though Lord knows she did. It's that she's pretending to be happy about it. Oh, here we fucking go. I pause near table 12, my grip tightening on the tray handles until my knuckles go white. Part of me wants to keep walking, to pretend I didn't hear her, but I'm like a deer caught in headlights. I can't move, can't look away, can't do anything but stand there and wait for the inevitable gut punch. I mean, look at him, Marjorie continues, and I know without looking that she's gesturing in my direction. 5 years ago, he was making serious money on Wall Street. Serious money. Had a corner office, expense accounts, a real future. And now, she laughs, but there's no humor in it. It's the sound a snake might make if snakes could express disdain. Now he's serving drinks at his own restaurant like some common waiter. The words hang in the air like smoke from a house fire, impossible to ignore and slowly poisoning everything around them. I can feel the weight of every stare in the room pressing down on my shoulders. Some people are trying to pretend they're not listening, suddenly very interested in their salmon tartare or their conversations about quarterly projections, but their ears are perked up like hunting dogs catching a scent. Brielle, the guest of honor who's supposed to be the center of attention tonight, looks absolutely delighted by this turn of events. She's practically glowing as she soaks up the secondhand drama, finally getting the spotlight she's been craving all evening. Her date, some trust fund kid whose biggest accomplishment is probably getting into law school because his daddy donated a wing to the building, is trying not to smirk and failing miserably. But here's the kicker. Marjorie's not done. Oh no, she's just getting warmed up. It's embarrassing, really, she announces, raising her voice just enough to make sure the back tables can hear her crystal clear. My daughter married down, and now she's stuck pretending that this. She waves her hand dismissively at the restaurant, at everything I've built, is somehow equivalent to a real career. It's a disgrace to the family name. And there it is, the nuclear option. The words that can't be taken back, can't be explained away, can't be softened with later apologies about having too much to drink. She's just called me, and by extension, her own daughter's marriage, a disgrace to the family name in front of a room full of people who will absolutely remember this moment and probably repeat it at dinner parties for years to come. The silence that follows is deafening. Even the kitchen noise seems to fade into the background. I can hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, can feel the heat rising in my face like I'm standing too close to an open oven. My throat feels like someone's wrapped their hands around it and started squeezing. Every server has stopped moving. Owen, who's been working the bar, looks like someone just told him his dog died. The guests at nearby tables are exchanging glances, some looking horrified, others looking like they're watching a car accident and can't tear their eyes away. And Lila, my wife, the woman who's supposed to be my partner in this life we've built together, she's standing about 10 feet away from her mother, staring down at her champagne glass like it holds the secrets of the universe. Her face has gone pale, but not pale with anger at her mother's cruelty. No, she looks pale with embarrassment. Embarrassment at being associated with me. She says nothing. Absolutely nothing. Doesn't defend me. Doesn't tell her mother to shut the hell up. Doesn't even make eye contact with me. She just stands there like a statue, letting her mother's words echo through the room unchallenged. That might be the worst part of all of this. Not Marjorie's viciousness. I expected that from her. Not the stares and whispers from the guests. I knew they'd be watching for drama. But Lila's silence feels like a betrayal so complete, so total, that it makes my chest physically ache. I think about all the times I've bitten my tongue when her parents made their little comments. All the dinners where I've smiled politely while they talked about real careers and stability and what people will think. All the family gatherings where I've been the outsider, the one who doesn't quite belong, the mistake their perfect daughter made that they're all just learning to live with. I've played their game for 5 years. I've been polite, respectful, patient. I've tried to prove myself worthy of their acceptance, worthy of their daughter. I've swallowed my pride more times than I can count because I thought it mattered to Lila, because I thought maintaining family harmony was worth my dignity. But standing here in my own restaurant, wearing this goddamn server's uniform while my mother-in-law destroys me in front of a crowd, I realize that no amount of politeness is ever going to be enough. No success will ever be the right kind of success. No achievement will ever measure up to their standards because the problem isn't what I do. It's who I am, where I come from, what I represent. I'm the reminder that their daughter chose love over status, passion over prestige, and they will never, ever forgive either of us for that choice. The moment stretches on forever, like being trapped in amber, until finally someone clears their throat and conversation slowly starts to resume. But the damage is done. The words are out there, floating around the room like poisonous gas, and everyone, absolutely everyone, has heard them. You know what they say about when it rains, it pours? Well, apparently the universe decided that tonight wasn't quite humiliating enough for me, so it decided to throw in a little slapstick comedy to really drive the point home. Because just when I think this evening can't possibly get any worse, Leo, one of our newest servers and a kid who's greener than week-old lettuce, decides to have his own personal meltdown right in the middle of my public crucifixion. I'm still reeling from Marjorie's verbal assassination, still trying to process the fact that my wife just stood there like a mannequin while her mother called me a family disgrace, when I hear the unmistakable sound of expensive glassware meeting an immovable object. In this case, that immovable object happens to be the marble floor of my restaurant, and the expensive glassware happens to be a bottle of 2015 Chateau Margaux that retails for about $300. The crash echoes through the dining room like a gunshot, and suddenly everyone's attention shifts from my public humiliation to this new spectacle unfolding near table 7. Leo, all 6 feet of nervous energy and fumbling hands, is standing there looking like he just accidentally kicked a puppy. The wine bottle lies in pieces at his feet, dark red liquid spreading across the floor like a crime scene, and splattered across Marjorie's pristine white Chanel dress like abstract art. For a moment, nobody moves. It's like one of those old Western movies where the gunfighter walks into the saloon and everything freezes. Leo's face has gone from pale to green to something approaching purple, and I can practically see his entire short-lived career at the Heritage flashing before his eyes. The poor kid probably thinks he's about to get fired, sued, and possibly excommunicated from the service industry all at once. But if I thought Marjorie was volcanic before, now she's gone full Mount Vesuvius. The woman who just finished destroying my reputation in front of half of Manhattan's legal elite is now staring down at her ruined dress with the kind of horror usually reserved for natural disasters or tax audits. "You absolute idiot," she shrieks, her voice hitting notes that could shatter crystal. The entire room, all 100 guests, turns to watch this new drama unfold. "Do you have any idea how much this dress cost?" "This is Chanel." "Chanel." Leo starts stammering out apologies, his hands fluttering uselessly as he tries to figure out whether he should attempt to clean up the wine or just dig a hole in the floor and disappear forever. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean to. It just slipped and I—" "Don't just stand there." Marjorie interrupts, her face now matching the wine stain on her dress. "Get someone. Get the manager. Get someone who knows what they're doing." And that's when the universe decides to deliver its final punchline of the evening. Because suddenly, every eye in the room is looking around for someone in charge, and I realize with the kind of crystal clarity that only comes from rock bottom that this is my moment. Not the moment I would have chosen, certainly not the moment I was hoping for, but it's the only moment I've got. I set down my tray, carefully, because God knows we don't need another wine bottle casualty, and step forward. My voice comes out steadier than I feel, cutting through the chaos with quiet authority. "That would be me." The words drop into the room like stones into still water, creating ripples of shock that spread from table to table. I can see people's faces changing as they process what I just said, as they realize that the glorified waiter they've been whispering about all evening is actually the guy who owns this place. Marjorie's mouth falls open like a broken hinge. For probably the first time in her entitled life, she's speechless. The woman who just spent the last 10 minutes eviscerating me in front of a room full of strangers is now staring at me like I just materialized out of thin air. "You?" She finally manages to sputter, her voice cracking with disbelief. "You're in charge." I pull a clean towel from my apron, the same apron that she probably thinks makes me look like hired help, and step closer to assess the damage. The wine has splattered across the bottom third of her dress, creating a pattern that actually looks kind of artistic if you squint at it right. Not that I'm about to share that observation. Yes, ma'am, I say, kneeling down to start cleaning up the glass shards. I'm the owner of the heritage, and I apologize for the accident. The gasps that ripple through the crowd are almost comical. I can hear people whispering furiously to each other, trying to reconcile the failure they've been hearing about all evening with the fact that this failure apparently owns the restaurant they're all eating in. It's like watching people's brains short-circuit in real time. Brielle's date, the trust fund kid who was smirking so smugly just a few minutes ago, actually chuckles. Not a nervous laugh or an uncomfortable giggle, but a genuine chuckle, like he thinks this whole situation is hilarious. Like the idea of me being in charge of anything is so absurd that it's comedy gold. This is rich, he says, loud enough for half the room to hear. The waiter's the boss? What's next? Is the busboy going to turn out to be the mayor? More nervous laughter ripples through the crowd, and I can feel that familiar heat rising in my face again. But this time, it's not embarrassment. This time, it's something closer to rage, the kind of slow-burning anger that starts in your gut and spreads outward until your whole body feels like it's vibrating. I finish picking up the larger pieces of glass and stand up, making eye contact with Trust Fund Boy. Actually, I say, my voice carrying just enough edge to cut through his amusement. The waiter is the owner. And the owner is about to comp your table's wine for the evening because that's what good restaurant owners do when their staff makes mistakes. The chuckle dies on his lips like I just told him his trust fund got embezzled. Suddenly, he's very interested in his plate of duck confit, probably wondering if he just insulted the guy who controls whether or not his food gets spit in. Meanwhile, Lila, my dear, supportive wife, continues her impression of a statue. She's still standing exactly where she was when her mother dropped her verbal nuclear bomb, still staring at her champagne glass like it holds the answers to life's great mysteries. Still saying absolutely nothing. The silence stretches out like taffy, thick and uncomfortable, while everyone waits to see what happens next. Marjorie is still staring at me like I'm some kind of optical illusion that she can't quite figure out. Her mouth keeps opening and closing, but no sound comes out. I'm pretty sure this is the longest she's gone without speaking since the Clinton administration. Finally, she finds her voice. Well, she says, straightening her shoulders and trying to regain some semblance of dignity despite the wine stain spreading across her designer dress. I suppose we should discuss compensation for this dress. And there it is. Even in her shock, even faced with the revelation that the disgrace to the family name actually owns the place where she's been holding court all evening, her first instinct is still to try to squeeze money out of the situation. Some things, apparently, never change. If you've ever wondered what divine intervention looks like, let me tell you. It walks through the front door of your restaurant at 10:15 p.m. wearing a perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit and carrying the kind of quiet confidence that makes entire rooms stop and pay attention. It also, apparently, has impeccable timing. I'm still dealing with the aftermath of Winegate, trying to navigate Marjorie's demands for compensation while simultaneously processing the fact that I just outed myself as the owner to a room full of people who've spent the evening treating me like the help when the front door chimes. Not unusual in itself. We're a restaurant, doors open and close all the time. But something about this particular entrance feels different. There's a shift in the atmosphere, like the air pressure just changed. The hostess station is unmanned because, well, we're in the middle of a private party and weren't expecting any walk-ins. But whoever just walked in doesn't seem to need guidance. I can hear the confident click of expensive leather shoes on my hardwood floors, moving with the kind of purpose that suggests this isn't someone who's lost or confused. The conversations around me start to fade, that same ripple effect that happened when Marjorie dropped her verbal bomb earlier, except this time the energy feels different. Instead of the train wreck fascination that accompanied my public humiliation, there's something that feels more like anticipation, recognition. I'm still on one knee, picking up the last few shards of the Chateau Margaux while trying to ignore Marjorie's ongoing monologue about designer dry cleaning costs, when I hear Brielle's voice cut through the ambient noise. "Oh my God," she says, and there's something in her tone I've never heard before. Something that sounds suspiciously like panic mixed with excitement. "Oh my God, that's Mr. Maddox." Mr. Maddox. The name hits the room like lightning, and suddenly everyone's heads are turning toward the entrance. Conversations don't just fade, They die completely, replaced by the kind of respectful silence usually reserved for churches or courtrooms. Charles Maddox, CEO of Maddox Capital, one of the most powerful investment firms on the East Coast. The man whose name appears on Forbes lists and whose opinions move markets. The man who, according to the financial press, could buy and sell most of Manhattan before his second cup of coffee. And also, though nobody in this room knows it yet, the man whose 25th wedding anniversary dinner I catered last month in his penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park. I stand up slowly, my knees protesting from kneeling on the marble floor, and turn toward the entrance. There he is, Charles Maddox in the flesh, looking exactly like he did that night in his home. Tall, silver-haired, with the kind of presence that suggests he's never doubted himself about anything in his entire life. He's scanning the room with those sharp gray eyes, taking in the scene like he's assessing a potential investment. The Ashfords have gone completely still. Douglas looks like he's just seen the Pope walk into his living room, and Marjorie has actually stopped talking, which might be the first time that's happened since the Carter administration. Even her wine-stained dress seems forgotten as she stares at this unexpected guest. Brielle, meanwhile, looks like she's about to hyperventilate. She starts moving toward him with the kind of desperate energy that screams career-making opportunity, practically elbowing other guests out of her way. "Mr. Maddox," she calls out, her voice hitting that particular frequency that ambitious lawyers use when they smell a chance to make an impression. "What a wonderful surprise. I had no idea you'd be joining us." But here's the thing about powerful men like Charles Maddox. They don't get where they are by being easily distracted or manipulated by eager subordinates. He acknowledges Brielle with a polite nod, the kind of professional courtesy you'd give to any employee, but his attention is clearly focused elsewhere. Those sharp gray eyes are scanning the room systematically, and I realize with a jolt of recognition that he's looking for someone. Looking for me. When his gaze finally finds mine across the dining room, his face breaks into what can only be described as a genuine smile. Not the practiced, camera-ready smile that CEOs wear to board meetings, but the kind of warm, personal smile you save for people you actually like. He starts walking toward me, cutting through the crowd with the kind of natural authority that makes people instinctively step aside. Conversations part before him like the Red Sea, and I can feel every eye in the room tracking his movement. Brielle is still trying to intercept him, babbling something about what an honor it is and how she hoped he'd approve of her choice of venue, but he's not slowing down. "Well, if it isn't the owner of the Heritage," he says as he approaches, his voice carrying that particular blend of warmth and authority that makes you understand why people pay him millions of dollars for his opinions. "Marcus, good to see you again." The words land in the room like a grenade with the pin pulled. I can actually hear people's sharp intakes of breath, can see the shock rippling across faces as they process what they just heard. Charles Maddox, the Charles Maddox, not only knows my name, but he's greeting me like we're old friends. He extends his hand toward me, and I take it, feeling the firm grip of a man who's spent decades closing deals and changing lives with a handshake. "Mr. Maddox," I say, trying to keep my voice steady despite the fact that I can practically feel the entire room leaning in to catch every word. "This is unexpected. Good to see you too. I was in the neighborhood," he says with the kind of casual ease that suggests being in the neighborhood of a private party on a Saturday night is perfectly normal for him. "Thought I'd stop by and see how you're doing. Plus, I heard through the grapevine that you might be hosting something special tonight." The grapevine. Right. In Charles Maddox's world, the grapevine probably consists of society pages and PR firms and the kind of connections that make information flow like water downhill. He probably knew about Brielle's party before half the guests did. Behind him, I can see the Ashfords frozen in what looks like a collective state of shock. Douglas's mouth is hanging open like a broken gate, and Marjorie looks like she's just witnessed a miracle, or possibly a natural disaster. It's hard to tell with her. Brielle, meanwhile, has finally caught up to us, slightly out of breath from her sprint across the dining room. "Mr. Maddox," she says, trying to insert herself into the conversation with all the subtlety of a bull in a china shop. "I'm so pleased you could make it to my celebration. As you know, I've just been promoted to senior associate, and I thought it would be wonderful too." But Charles Maddox does something that stops her mid-sentence. He turns to look at her with the kind of polite but dismissive attention you might give to a particularly persistent waiter, then turns back to me without missing a beat. "How's business?" he asks, as if Brielle hasn't said a word. "That anniversary dinner you catered for Sarah and me last month was extraordinary. Best meal we've had in years. I've been telling everyone about it. You know what's absolutely beautiful about human nature? How quickly people can completely flip their entire worldview when their self-interest is on the line. I'm talking Olympic-level mental gymnastics here, the kind of breathtaking hypocrisy that would make a politician blush. And right now, I'm getting a front-row seat to the most spectacular display of ass-kissing and damage control I've ever witnessed in my life." Charles Maddox's words about my catering work are still hanging in the air like morning fog, and I can literally see the gears turning in people's heads as they frantically recalibrate their understanding of who I am and what I represent. It's like watching a computer reboot in slow motion, except instead of a blue screen, I'm seeing the dawning horror on the Ashfords' faces as they realize they've been publicly trashing someone who apparently has the personal phone number of one of the most powerful men in Manhattan. The first one to recover is Douglas, because of course it is. The man has spent his entire career climbing corporate ladders, so he's got the social survival instincts of a cockroach. I watch his face transform from shock to confusion to what can only be described as desperate recalculation, all in the span of about 3 seconds. "Marcus," he booms suddenly, his voice carrying across the room with the kind of forced enthusiasm usually reserved for game show hosts. "My boy, you know, we were just talking about what a success the Heritage has become. Weren't we, Marjorie?" Marjorie, who approximately 10 minutes ago was calling me a disgrace to the family name, now looks like she's been hit by a truck full of reality. Her wine-stained Chanel dress suddenly seems like the least of her problems as she scrambles to figure out how to walk back 30 minutes of character assassination without looking like a complete sociopath. "Oh yes," she says, her voice pitched about an octave higher than normal. "Yes, we're so proud of Marcus. Always have been. Haven't we, Douglas?" The woman who literally just finished explaining to half the room how embarrassed she was by her daughter's choice in husbands is now beaming at me like I just cured cancer and solved world hunger in the same afternoon. The transformation is so complete, so utterly shameless, that I almost have to admire the sheer audacity of it. Charles, meanwhile, is watching this whole performance with the kind of amused interest you might show when watching a particularly entertaining reality TV show. He's been in business long enough to recognize desperation when he sees it, and right now he's seeing it in high-definition surround sound. "The Heritage really is something special," he continues, seemingly oblivious to the frantic energy radiating from the Ashford family. "The attention to detail, the quality of the ingredients, the service, it's exactly the kind of establishment that Manhattan needs more of. Too many places these days focus on flash over substance. But Marcus here understands that true hospitality is about creating an experience." With each word of praise, I can see the Ashfords deflating a little more. Brielle, who was so smug earlier when her mother was eviscerating me, now looks like she's trying to solve a complicated math problem. Her date, trust fund boy who thought the idea of me being in charge was so hilarious, has gone completely silent and is suddenly very interested in his phone. "You know," Charles continues, "Sarah and I have been looking for a place to host our annual charity gala. We usually rent out the ballroom at the plaza, but frankly, the food there has become predictably mediocre. Marcus, would the Heritage be able to accommodate something like that?" The question hangs in the air like a challenge, and suddenly everyone in the room is paying very close attention to my answer. Because a charity gala for Charles and Sarah Maddox isn't just a dinner party. It's the kind of event that gets covered in the society pages, the kind of gathering that can make or break social standing in certain circles. "I'd be honored," I say, keeping my voice level despite the fact that I can practically feel the Ashfords' panic radiating across the room. "We can certainly discuss the details." And that's when the Real show begins. Because suddenly, the same people who were whispering about my fall from grace 20 minutes ago are now scrambling to get close to me like I'm radioactive in the best possible way. Marjorie appears at my elbow with the speed of a woman who's just realized her entire social strategy needs immediate revision. "Marcus, darling," she says, and I swear to God she actually uses the word darling, like we're suddenly best friends. You know, I was just telling Constance here about how brilliant you've been with this place. Such vision, such entrepreneurial spirit. Constance, whoever the hell she is, nods enthusiastically like she was definitely part of this conversation that absolutely never happened. Oh yes, she gushes. You can just feel the passion and dedication in every detail. It's so refreshing to see someone following their dreams so successfully. Following their dreams successfully. Right. The same dreams that were apparently an embarrassment to the family name 15 minutes ago. Douglas has maneuvered himself into position on my other side, and he's nodding along like a bobblehead in an earthquake. You know, Marcus, he says, lowering his voice like he's sharing some profound wisdom. I've always said that the restaurant industry is where the real innovators end up. It takes vision to succeed in hospitality. Real vision. The man who spent the first half of the evening telling anyone who would listen about how his daughter could have done so much better is now suddenly positioning himself as my biggest supporter. It would be impressive if it weren't so completely transparent. Even Brielle has joined the party, sidling up with that calculated smile she probably learned in law school. Marcus, she says, her voice dripping with newfound respect. I had no idea you were connected to such influential people. Mr. Maddox speaks so highly of your work. Connected to influential people. As if my relationship with Charles Maddox is some kind of social climbing achievement rather than the result of, actually being good at what I do. As if the man praised my catering because of who I know rather than because I served him and his wife the best damn anniversary dinner they'd had in years. But here's what really gets me. Lila, my wife, who stood silent as a tomb while her mother publicly humiliated me, who couldn't be bothered to defend our marriage or our choices when it mattered, is now suddenly animated and engaged. She's moved closer to our little group, and she's actually smiling. Not the polite, strained smile she's been wearing all evening, but something that looks almost genuine. Isn't this wonderful? She says, and her voice has that bright, brittle quality that means she's working overtime to seem natural. I'm so glad everyone can finally see what I've always known about Marcus and the heritage. What she's always known. Right. The woman who spent the last year suggesting I should consider my options in terms of career moves, who's dropped not-so-subtle hints about how much more stable life would be if I went back to finance, is now acting like she's been my biggest cheerleader all along. Charles Maddox catches my eye and gives me the slightest of winks, like he knows exactly what kind of performance he's just triggered and finds it mildly entertaining. The man didn't get where he is by being oblivious to human nature. If I thought the sudden personality transplants were entertaining, what happens next is like watching a nature documentary about vultures. You know the scene, where the predators realize there's fresh meat available and suddenly everyone's circling, trying to figure out how to get the biggest piece for themselves. Except in this case, I'm the fresh meat, and the vultures are wearing designer clothing and speaking in carefully modulated tones that are supposed to sound casual, but actually scream desperation. The Ashfords have apparently held an emergency family meeting using nothing but meaningful glances and subtle head nods, because suddenly they're moving with the kind of coordinated precision usually reserved for military operations or flash mobs. Douglas and Marjorie have positioned themselves like bookends on either side of me, while Brielle approaches with the calculated swagger of someone who's just figured out how to turn a social disaster into a career opportunity. But here's where it gets really interesting. Because Charles Maddox, bless his billionaire heart, has excused himself to take a phone call. Something about Hong Kong markets opening and time-sensitive decisions that probably involve moving around more money than most people see in a lifetime. Which means I'm suddenly alone with the Ashford family and their newly discovered appreciation for my entrepreneurial genius. Brielle strikes first, because of course she does. The woman who spent the early part of the evening letting her mother roast me like a Sunday chicken is now sliding up to me with the kind of smile that probably works wonders in depositions, but makes my skin crawl. Marcus, she says, and her voice has taken on this conspiratorial tone like we're old friends sharing secrets. I have to say, I'm incredibly impressed by what you've built here. The atmosphere, the clientele. Clearly you understand how to cultivate relationships with the right people. The right people. As if my friendship with Charles Maddox is some kind of calculated networking move rather than the result of him actually enjoying the food I prepared for his anniversary dinner. as if every relationship in her world is transactional, which, come to think of it, probably explains a lot about the Ashford family dynamic. You know, she continues, lowering her voice like she's about to reveal state secrets, I've been thinking about diversifying my portfolio, moving beyond just legal work into some more entrepreneurial ventures. And it occurs to me that there might be some real synergy between what you're doing here and what I could bring to the table. Synergy. Christ. She's been at her law firm for exactly 5 minutes longer than a summer intern, and she's already talking like a business school textbook. But I can see where this is heading, and it's about as subtle as a freight train. What I'm thinking, Brielle says, moving even closer so her voice doesn't carry to the other guests, is that maybe we could explore some kind of partnership. Pool our resources, leverage our combined networks. I mean, with my connections in the legal community and your obvious talent for hospitality, we could really build something special together. Our combined networks. Our resources. The woman who was perfectly content to watch her mother demolish me in front of a room full of strangers 30 minutes ago is now talking about partnership like we're founding members of some startup unicorn. It's breathtaking, really, the speed at which she's pivoted from dismissive family member to potential business partner. But Brielle's just getting warmed up. I'm thinking we could expand the heritage brand, she continues, her eyes lighting up with the kind of evangelical fervor usually reserved for pyramid schemes. Maybe open a second location, something more upscale. I could handle the business side, the legal aspects, investor relations. You could focus on the creative elements, the food, the atmosphere. Translation: she wants to swoop in and take over the business side of what I've built while relegating me to the role of creative consultant in my own restaurant. It's the kind of arrangement where she gets to play CEO while I get to be the charming chef who shows up for photo ops and menu tastings. And just in case I'm not getting the message, she decides to sweeten the pot. Of course, with my promotion and my new salary, I'd be able to bring some serious capital to the table. Real investment money, not just startup funds. Ah, there it is. The carrot to go with the stick. She's offering to bankroll an expansion in exchange for what I'm sure would be a controlling interest in my life's work. Because nothing says family partnership like leveraging someone's potential financial needs to muscle your way into their business. But wait, there's more. Because Marjorie, not to be outdone by her golden child, decides to throw her hat into the ring with all the subtlety of a demolition crew. You know, Marcus, she says, appearing at my shoulder like she materialized out of thin air. Brielle's absolutely right about the potential here. And I have to say, Douglas and I have been talking, and we think it's only logical to keep success in the family. Keep success in the family. The woman who called me a family disgrace is now suddenly concerned about keeping success in the family. It's like watching someone try to rewrite history in real time while standing in the exact spot where the original events happened. We've always believed in supporting family ventures, Marjorie continues, and I swear she says this with a straight face, like she hasn't spent the last 5 years making it crystal clear that my venture was an embarrassment to the family name. And frankly, with our connections in the community, our social network, we could really help take the heritage to the next level. Their social network. The same social network that spent the evening whispering about my fall from grace and nodding along while Marjorie explained how embarrassed she was by her daughter's choice in husbands. Now suddenly that network is an asset they're generously offering to share. But here's where Lila decides to enter the conversation, and her contribution might be the most audacious of all. My wife, my supposedly supportive partner who stood silent while her family fed me to the wolves, leans in with a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. Maybe we should think about giving Brielle a stake in the restaurant, she says, her voice carrying that reasonable tone she uses when she's trying to make terrible ideas sound sensible. I mean, it would be a great way to strengthen family bonds. And honestly, Marcus, you could probably use some help with the business side of things. I could use some help with the business side of things. The woman who watches me work 16-hour days to keep this place running, who sees me hunched over spreadsheets and vendor contracts and health department regulations every night, thinks I need help with the business side of things. From her sister, who until tonight thought my entire career was a joke. But the real kicker comes when Brielle nods enthusiastically at her sister's suggestion. Exactly, she says. I mean, Marcus, you're clearly talented at the creative aspects, but running a business, especially one with growth potential. That's a whole different skill set. You need someone who understands legal structures, tax implications, expansion strategies. Someone like her, presumably. Someone who's been practicing law for approximately 15 minutes, but somehow considers herself qualified to restructure my entire business model. Someone who couldn't be bothered to defend me when her mother was calling me worthless, but now wants to be my business partner. The three of them are looking at me expectantly, like they've just presented me with the opportunity of a lifetime instead of the most transparent money grab I've ever witnessed. They're standing there, Marjorie with her wine-stained Chanel and her newfound appreciation for my entrepreneurial spirit, Brielle with her legal shark smile and her sudden interest in hospitality ventures, and Lila with her reasonable tone and her helpful suggestions about what I need. And that's when something inside me just breaks. Not breaks like shatters, but breaks like a dam that's been holding back pressure for too long. I feel this laugh building up in my chest, starting as a chuckle and growing into something bigger, something that probably sounds a little unhinged but feels absolutely necessary. Because the absurdity of it all, the sheer, breathtaking audacity of these people who spent years treating me like I was defective suddenly wanting to cash in on my success, is so ridiculous that laughter is the only sane response. You know what's funny about reaching your breaking point? It doesn't happen with fireworks and dramatic music like in the movies. It happens quietly, almost anticlimactically, like a switch being flipped in your brain. 1 second you're standing there listening to people who've spent years treating you like garbage suddenly trying to cash in on your success, and the next second you realize you're completely done pretending that any of this is normal or acceptable. The laughter that's been building in my chest finally breaks free, and it's not the kind of polite chuckle you use to deflect tension at dinner parties. This is raw, genuine laughter. The kind that comes from a place so deep that you didn't even know it existed until something absurd enough finally triggered it. It starts as a low rumble and builds into something that probably sounds a little unhinged, but I honestly don't give a damn anymore. The Ashfords freeze like I just started speaking in tongues. Marjorie's mouth falls open, Brielle takes a step back, and Lila looks genuinely alarmed, like she's seeing a side of me she never knew existed. Which, come to think of it, she probably is. Because I've spent 5 years being the accommodating son-in-law, the patient husband, the guy who swallows his pride and keeps the peace for the sake of family harmony. Well, congratulations, everyone. You just met the version of me that's fresh out of patience and completely done with your bullshit. Partnership, I say, still chuckling as I shake my head. Jesus Christ, Brielle, you've got some serious balls. I'll give you that much. Her face flushes red, but I'm not done. Not even close. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. I continue, my voice getting steadier with each word. For the last 5 years, your family has made it crystal clear that my career choice was an embarrassment. Your mother just spent the better part of an hour telling a room full of people that I'm a disgrace to the family name. You personally have spent the evening watching me get humiliated while wearing a server's uniform in my own restaurant. And now that Charles Maddox shows up and says a few nice words, suddenly you want to be business partners. I look around at their faces, and the combination of guilt and greed I see there is almost artistic in its transparency. You want to leverage our combined networks and pool our resources and help me with the business side of things, because clearly I'm just some creative type who couldn't possibly understand the complexities of running my own company. Brielle opens her mouth to say something, probably to explain how this is all a misunderstanding and how she's always believed in me, but I hold up a hand to stop her. No, I say firmly. You had your chance to talk. For years, you've had your chance to talk, and what you chose to say was that I was a failure, a disappointment, a step down from what your sister deserved. So now it's my turn. The dining room has gone quiet around us. Not completely silent. There are still conversations happening at other tables, the soft clink of silverware on plates, the ambient noise of a restaurant in full swing. But our little corner of the room has become its own bubble of tension, and I can feel people's attention even if they're pretending not to listen. I don't need your help, I say, looking directly at Brielle. I don't need your connections, your capital, your legal expertise, or your business acumen. What I needed was basic human decency and respect, and you couldn't even manage that when it mattered. I turned to Marjorie, who's still standing there in her wine-stained Chanel like a broken socialite doll. You want to talk about family? About keeping success in the family? Where was that family loyalty when you were calling me worthless in front of a room full of strangers? Where was that support when I was pouring my life savings into this place and working 18-hour days to make it work? She starts to stammer something about how they've always been proud of me, how there must have been some misunderstanding, but I'm not interested in her revisionist history. And you? I say, finally turning to face Lila, my wife. The woman who promised to stand by me through better or worse, but apparently forgot to read the fine print about what worse actually meant. The look on her face almost breaks my heart. Almost. There's genuine shock there, like she's seeing me clearly for the first time in years. Like she's suddenly realized that the patient, accommodating husband she's been taking for granted actually has a breaking point. You think I need help with the business side of things? I ask her, my voice quieter now, but no less intense. The business that I built from nothing? The business that's booked solid most nights? The business that just got a personal endorsement from one of the most powerful men in Manhattan? That business. I can see her struggling to find words, to explain or defend or somehow make this all make sense, but I'm not done yet. For 5 years, I've watched you stand silent while your family treated me like I was some kind of charity case they were forced to tolerate. I've listened to you suggest that maybe I should consider going back to finance, that maybe this restaurant thing was just a phase I needed to get out of my system. I've watched you choose them over us, over and over again, and I convinced myself that it was worth it because I loved you. The words are coming faster now, like a dam that's finally burst completely. But tonight you stood there and said nothing while your mother called me a disgrace. You didn't defend me. You didn't defend our marriage. You didn't defend the life we've built together. You just stood there like a statue and let it happen. Lila's eyes are starting to fill with tears, but I can't tell if they're tears of guilt or just frustration that her carefully constructed world is suddenly falling apart. And now, I continue. Now that it's suddenly convenient, now that I might actually be useful to your family instead of just an embarrassment, you want me to give your sister a piece of what I built? You want me to hand over a stake in my life's work to someone who couldn't even be bothered to defend me when I needed it most? I shake my head, feeling something like freedom settling into my chest for the first time in years. No, absolutely not. You've spent years calling me a disgrace, and now you want in? I don't need your help. I never did. The silence that follows is complete this time. Even the ambient restaurant noise seems to fade into the background as my words hang in the air like smoke. I can see other guests glancing our way, probably wondering what kind of family drama they've stumbled into, but I honestly don't care anymore. Charles Maddox chooses that exact moment to return from his phone call, sliding back into our group with the kind of timing that suggests he either has supernatural hearing or incredible intuition about when conversations have reached their climax. He takes one look at the shell-shocked faces around me and nods approvingly. Everything all right here? He asks. But there's something in his tone that suggests he knows exactly what's been happening and approves of the outcome. Everything's perfect, I say, meeting his eyes with a level of confidence I haven't felt in years. Just having a family discussion about business priorities. He nods again, that slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Good man, he says quietly. Sometimes you have to be clear about boundaries. And for the first time in 5 years, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Chapter 9, the last gesture. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away. Not dramatically, not with a lot of noise and door slamming and theatrical declarations, but quietly, with the kind of calm finality that makes everyone understand that something fundamental has just shifted. That's exactly what I do after my little speech to the Ashford Family Tribunal. I simply excuse myself, shake Charles Maddox's hand one more time, and head to my office. The office is tucked away behind the kitchen, a small space that I carved out of what used to be a storage closet. It's not much to look at. A desk that's seen better days, a filing cabinet that's held together with duct tape and determination, and a couch I picked up from a thrift store when I first opened this place. But it's mine. Every scratch on that desk, every stain on that couch, every piece of paper in that filing cabinet represents something I built with my own 2 hands. I sink into my chair and just breathe for a minute. Through the thin walls, I can hear the restaurant continuing to function around me. Owen's voice calling out orders, the clatter of plates being cleared, the low hum of conversation as the party winds down. Life goes on, which is both comforting and surreal after what just happened out there. My phone buzzes, and I already know what it's going to be before I look at the screen. Sure enough, there's a text from Lila. We need to talk. We need to talk. For words that have probably preceded more relationship endings than I love you has preceded beginnings. But I'm not ready for that conversation yet. I'm not ready to hear her explanations, her justifications, her attempts to make me understand why standing silent while her mother destroyed me was somehow the reasonable thing to do. Instead, I set the phone aside and just sit there in the quiet of my office, listening to the sounds of my restaurant, my successful, profitable, respected restaurant, operating exactly the way it's supposed to. Without the Ashfords' help, without their connections, or their capital, or their business acumen. Just the way I built it. The phone buzzes again. Another text from Lila. I know you're angry, but we can work through this. Work through this. Like tonight was just a minor disagreement about what to watch on Netflix instead of a complete revelation about where I actually stand in my wife's list of priorities. Like 5 years of being treated like the family's biggest disappointment is something we can just smooth over with a heart-to-heart conversation and maybe some couples therapy. I pick up the phone and start typing a response, then delete it. Start again, delete again. How do you explain to someone that they've fundamentally misunderstood the situation? That this isn't about anger, it's about clarity? That sometimes you don't realize how small you've been making yourself until something forces you to stand up straight? Instead of responding to Lila, I open a new browser window and navigate to Tiffany's website. If I'm going to end this relationship, I'm going to do it properly. The Ashfords might not understand dignity or respect, but they sure as hell understand expensive gestures and symbolic meanings. I scroll through the Pearl collection until I find what I'm looking for. A classic Mikimoto strand, elegant and understated, and exactly the kind of thing Marjorie would wear to her country club luncheons. The price tag makes me wince slightly. It's not cheap, but considering it's going to be my final contribution to the Ashford family drama, I figure it's worth the investment. I select overnight delivery and type in Marjorie's address, then pause at the gift message section. What do you say to someone who just spent the evening publicly humiliating you before trying to muscle in on your success? How do you sum up 5 years of disappointment and a lifetime's worth of learning about your own self-worth? In the end, I keep it simple. Happy birthday, Marjorie. This is my last gift. I stopped being family when I stopped being useful. Short, sweet, and impossible to misinterpret. No room for her to spin it into some kind of misunderstanding or temporary emotional outburst. Just a clear statement of fact. Our relationship was transactional, and now that I understand that, the transaction is over. I hit submit and lean back in my chair, feeling something that might be relief or might be exhaustion. Probably both. The phone buzzes again. This time it's a longer message from Lila. Mom's birthday is next week. Everyone's hoping you'll come. It would mean a lot to the family if you were there. Please don't let tonight ruin everything. Everyone's hoping I'll come. Right. The same everyone who spent tonight making it crystal clear that I'm an embarrassment to the family name. The same everyone who thinks my life's work is some kind of cute hobby that I'll hopefully grow out of when I come to my senses and get a real job. Don't let tonight ruin everything. As if tonight was some kind of anomaly instead of the inevitable conclusion of 5 years of being treated like a second-class family member. As if the problem is my reaction to their behavior instead of their behavior itself. I stare at the message for a long time, thinking about all the family gatherings I've attended over the years. All the birthday dinners and holiday celebrations and anniversary parties where I've smiled politely while Douglas made jokes about my career choices. All the times I've bitten my tongue while Marjorie explained to her friends how challenging it must be to have a son-in-law in the service industry. All the occasions where I've pretended that their backhanded compliments and passive-aggressive comments were just harmless family teasing. Well, no more. I'm done pretending that their treatment of me is normal or acceptable. I'm done making myself smaller to make them more comfortable. I'm done being grateful for the scraps of approval they occasionally throw my way when I've managed to exceed their incredibly low expectations. I don't respond to Lila's text. Instead, I do something I probably should have done years ago. I block her number. Then I block Douglas's number, and Marjorie's, and Brielle's. Not because I'm angry, though I am, but because I'm done. Done with their drama, done with their manipulation, done with their desperate attempts to stay relevant in my life now that I might actually be useful to them. It's not about revenge or punishment or trying to hurt them the way they've hurt me. It's about recognizing that some relationships are toxic, even when they're wrapped up in the language of family and obligation and doing the right thing. It's about understanding that you can't fix people who don't think they're broken, and you can't change people who don't want to change. The heritage is my life now, not theirs. The people who matter: Owen, Amir, Shahana, Charles Maddox. The customers who come back week after week because they genuinely enjoy what we've created here. Those people see me for who I actually am, not who they wish I would become or who they think I should be. My phone screen goes dark, and I realize that for the first time in 5 years, I'm not waiting for the next text, the next family obligation, the next opportunity to prove myself worthy of acceptance that was never going to come anyway. The restaurant is getting quieter now. The party is winding down, and soon the last of the guests will file out into the night, probably talking about the dramatic confrontation they just witnessed. Some of them will side with the Ashfords, thinking I was ungrateful or inappropriate. Others might understand that sometimes you have to stand up for yourself, even when, especially when, it's uncomfortable for everyone involved. But honestly, I don't care what they think. For the first time in a very long time, the only opinion that matters to me is my own. Sometimes the most important conversations happen in complete silence. Not the kind of awkward silence you get when someone says something inappropriate at a dinner party, but the kind of profound, soul-deep quiet that settles over you when you finally understand that a chapter of your life is officially over. That's where I am now, sitting in my office at 1:30 in the morning, staring at the dark wood of my desk while the restaurant sleeps around me. The Ashfords cleared out about an hour ago, trailing behind them the kind of stunned silence usually reserved for natural disasters or stock market crashes. Charles Maddox stayed for another drink, made some polite conversation about the charity gala, and left with a handshake that felt more like a benediction than a goodbye. And Lila? Lila left without saying a word. She just gathered her purse, kissed Brielle's cheek, and walked out the front door like she was leaving any other family gathering. No drama, no tears, no desperate attempt to fix what just broke. Just a quiet exit that somehow hurt more than any screaming match could have. My phone sits on the desk in front of me, its black screen reflecting the amber light from the desk lamp. I've been staring at it for the better part of 20 minutes, not because I'm expecting a call, but because I'm trying to decide whether to make one. Or more accurately, whether to respond to the text that came in 15 minutes after the party ended. The message is classic Lila, brief, reasonable, and completely tone-deaf to everything that just happened. Mom's birthday next week. Everyone's hoping you'll come. Mom's birthday. As if we just had a minor disagreement about dinner reservations instead of a complete nuclear meltdown of our relationship. As if I didn't just publicly cut ties with her entire family after years of systematic humiliation. As if we can just pretend tonight never happened and go back to playing happy families